As the Sixers continue to limp to the finish line and put a bow on this disappointing season, it has not stopped a couple former members of the team from taking their victory laps, with PJ Tucker leading the charge on some recent critiques of this Sixers organization, and Marcus Morris also sharing the same breath on national TV. I want to break down exactly what these guys said, why I do think it holds a little bit of weight, and why I don't think the timing is overly coincidental for each of these guys here. Now, to dive into why exactly this came to light, as PJ Tucker has had a bit of a unique pathway to his career since leaving the Sixers. He's kind of a guy on the fringes of the NBA, but he has ultimately signed a new contract with the New York Knicks to be that, quote unquote tough veteran as he was here in Philadelphia. And he'd signed two 10-day contracts before agreeing to a 2-year contract. So PJ Tucker, shout out to him. That man is going to be playing until he is 80 years old there. Now, as far as what he said on this particular topic, shout out to Sixers Wire Kai Carlin, who did meet up with him. PJ is a guy who's still around Philadelphia quite often. I have crossed paths with him on a couple occasions at the Rump Classic and a couple other Pro-Am situations that he just seems to be loving it in Philly here. So he loves the city. I know he has some business ventures there, and he's not shy to speak his mind either. So Kyle Carlin spoke up with him, and in his article states, even when the trio did play, which is stating Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, and Joel Embiid here, which was only 15 times, it wasn't great results. The Sixers went 7-8 in those games, and there wasn't much chemistry. Knicks forward PJ Tucker talked with Sixers Wire about the trio as he has played with all three players in his career. Quote, individually, all three of them are amazing players, obviously, Tucker said. They've all played at super high level for a long time outside of Tyrese, but Joel and PG, I say it all the time. It's hard to just put three people together and just think they're going to work. It don't work like that. And he continued on to talk about chemistry, stating, chemistry is a big part of success. This isn't fantasy basketball where three guys come together and then boom, instant championship. It takes time. These three need to play together, and they weren't able to get much court time together because of all the injuries. Quote, you got to build chemistry, Tucker continued. You got to build the trust. You got to build camaraderie. You got to build it all. The way you play has an effect. The shots you take, the sacrifices that people really got to take in real life. All that takes its toll, and it runs throughout the season and the injuries and everything. It's a lot. It's crazy. I think it's crazy how it works. And he continued on with one more thought here, stating, quote, yeah, because he's got to deal with everyone else asking, should he have played here? Or should he have done this? Tucker said of Embiid. As a player, you don't think about that. You think about playing all the time and helping out teams the best you can when you can. But it's life. That's kind of how it works. At this point in the season, all the Sixers can do is hope for a better injury luck in the 25-26 season. If they're healthy, and certainly a big if for this group, then they should be considered a serious contender for the East. Until then, Embiid, George, and Maxey will have to heal up and hope for better luck in the future. Now, a lot to get into here and digest what PJ Tucker is stating. Overall, I think all fair game from him, and I honestly think he went a little bit tamer than he would. Marcus Morris, not quite as much, and I will get to him in a second there. But for Tucker specifically, this is a guy who I think genuinely wishes well for the Sixers, which I think is cool. I do think he loves Philadelphia. And even like when he was here, I get the box score totals were not what we wanted to be, and frankly, I would not make the case that he helped this team actually win games, but I did appreciate the toughness that he brought. I did appreciate him chewing Joel Embiid out in the middle of the court when Joel needed to hear that here. There have not been a lot of guys that have stepped up and done that, and PJ Tucker did. So shout out to him. I do think that was all fair, above the belt and everything there, and now I will shift to Marcus Morris, who also joined the party in critiquing. Now, I don't have the exact quote here from him, but shout out to Believe in 76ers, great little podcast there as well, who states out, former 76ers forward Marcus Morris says Joel Embiid needs to be held accountable. Needs someone to clean up his diet. He thinks his second surgery in 14 months will be a wake-up call to Joel. Now, Marcus Morris has done a little bit of his media tour of late. Have seen a couple different quotes of him talking about the Sixers, and in this specific clip on Sports Take here, that he was pretty direct. He was like, I was in that Sixers locker room. I can speak from firsthand experience that Daryl Morey does not hold Joel Embiid accountable, and that needs to change. And when you look at Daryl Morey's track record, that has been a theme of him not keeping stars accountable, and that is a huge issue. Now, a couple of thoughts here. Number one, I think that is probably true. I think we all have enough evidence in front of us based on how Joel Embiid has gone. Some of the stories we've heard about James Harden in Houston, having his jersey retired in certain establishments for late night activities and things of that Daryl Morey does let guys go. Now, I don't have an issue with that in large part. When guys take care of business on the court, when they do their job at a high level, there shouldn't be anything you worry about beyond that. If James Harden wants to stay out until 3 a.m. and can still give you 40, 10, and 10 the next day, which he certainly was doing at a regular rate in his prime Houston days, whatever. I can look the other way on all of this. Now, where this all falls apart is the current state of the Sixers. Now, I do think it's a different situation with Joel Embiid specifically because in a lot of cases when we're talking about holding guys accountable, it's about doing the bare minimum, doing your job, showing up on time, those kind of things. For Joel, I think the larger conversation is purely about health here. And there, to an extent, while I understand he could take steps to improve his odds, to an extent, there isn't really a way to win this battle with your body. These are the cards that you're dealt. This is the way that you're assigned. I don't think you can turn back the clock. Now, it's fair to critique some of the habits of Joel in his upbringing, in his early parts of his NBA career that did not maximize his odds at the state of his game. But to an extent, the damage is done at this point, and you just got to kind of keep on chugging from here. And for Marcus Morris specifically, I also get a little bit sick of the concept of like there needs to be a better veteran leaders. There needs to be more accountability in the locker room when he was in it, man. Like you can be that voice. You can be that guy that is showing these stars how to, handle business professionally. And granted, do I think that would have been a message well received by Joel Embiid? No, I don't. I think at this point in the game that he's been in the league for 10 plus years, he has his habits, he does his thing. But for Marcus Morris, it does feel a little bit like sour grapes to be complaining when you could have been a part of the fix if it was that important to you. And as far as the shots at Daryl Morey, which have been pretty direct at this point, talked about how he doesn't like the way that Daryl Morey moves, the way that he shifts rosters, trades players, all these things. You're saying that a lot for a guy that literally drafted you and acquired you twice during his NBA career. So I don't quite get like the vendetta against Daryl Morey from Marcus Morris specifically, but he is a guy that is a Philly legend, has been incredibly nice to me in my brief interactions with him. I've talked to him at the Rumph Classic and a couple other situations as well. Not a guy that I'm coming at his neck or, want to be angry against, but I do think that maybe the frustrations with these overall decisions are a little bit misguided and overly personal at Daryl Morey in a way that probably should not be the case. But nonetheless, none of this matters for the Sixers team for what these guys say until they can get things back on track here. And we did get an interesting outlook for another one of these veterans that I think you can throw in the same category of the Marcus Morris and PJ Tuckers as Kyle Lowry stepped back on the floor this week. And there was an interesting quote. Now, Lowry came back, played one game, logged 16 minutes, and was back on the, injured recovery list that we probably won't see him again. My guess is that was probably a one last sort of farewell tour for the Philadelphia product, the Villanova guy, the Toronto Raptors legend, whatever you want to say about Kyle Lowry. It is disappointing that this is how this season has gone. I think the frustrations with Kyle Lowry are all fair in regard to it has been a larger role that he's had in Philadelphia than was designed or should be the case at this point. But I think a lot of that, if you actually want to trace it, has been directly correlated to injuries that have popped up. For example, D'Anthony Melton's back issues taking place in last year's playoffs forced Kyle Lowry into the starting lineup, things like that. But nonetheless, Kyle Lowry did speak a little bit on the outlook, and to pull up his quote here, that he said, quote, "It's always fun to play basketball," Lowry told reporters. "Listen, we're privileged and we're honored to play the game of basketball, and I love this game at its highest level. It's provided me, my family, my friends with everything that I can actually ask for. So why not try to do it? Play and just have fun." Lowry joined the Sixers last season after reaching a buyout with the Charlotte Hornets. At the time, the Sixers were on their way to another postseason appearance, representing the Eastern Conference as the 7th seed. Over the offseason, Lowry returned to the Sixers on a one-year deal. And there has been quite a bit of vocal praise for him stepping back on the floor, talking about having a little leadership out there, a little veteran presence. I thought he looked fine. He didn't score a basket, had a couple assists, did his thing, did some Kyle Lowry things while he was out there, took a charge, all those kind of things. I guess I respect him stepping on the floor. I don't really get the point of it or anything like that, but I do think it's interesting that I certainly would not consider what is recently going down on the Sixers organization as the, quote, basketball or this game at the highest level, as Lowry said. So nonetheless, very interesting to me. The biggest concern that I will throw on the table to kind of wrap things up here is, true or not, it does feel like the critiques of Daryl Morey or the frustrations from former players and current players is getting more and more prevalent here. And I do think there comes a certain point where the truth almost doesn't matter to an extent. That if there's this many people saying things against you or having concerns or are frustrated with the way you move, the lack of trust, all these kind of things that are sort of clinging to Daryl Morey's reputation, there comes a point where that just sticks. And there does not matter if there's truth. Daryl Morey could be moving in the completely cleanest, most ethically fair way on all these decisions. But if guys are going to be upset over all this, there comes a point where continues to funnel back on you. And for Daryl specifically, we've seen guys go to some pretty extreme lengths. James Harden going to China to tell a group of Chinese children that he will never play for a franchise that Daryl Morey represents ever again. That was insane. Something we will never see again. And obviously, guys like Pat Bev, guys like making sort of comments like this, it just feels like a bit of a lot that has been thrown at Daryl Morey. And I do wonder if there is some irreparable damage there from a reputation standpoint. The Sixers will find out this summer as we begin to go into some of those conversations. Obviously, a couple more games left in the season, and then that fateful NBA draft lottery, which will decide a significant portion of the future direction of the franchise. But to this point, we will keep on chugging in the Sixers world. Appreciate you guys for tuning into this video here. I know it has been a brutal season. We're going to continue pushing along, get through it together. So make sure you're hitting a like on this video if you have not already. Drop your thoughts below. Do want to hear where your guys' temperature check is on Daryl Morey at this point. And there's plenty ready to race out and chase him out of town with pitchforks, and I understand that mindset as well. Also, some Daryl Morey defenders out there on the timeline have seen that. So drop your thoughts below. As always, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video. I'll be back talking with you next time. Peace.